Being Markled, the harsh reality. How's your daddy, Megan?
Had. Um, Thank you for everything, and I'll talk to you later. Okay, bye bye.
So this article came out overnight. I have a feeling it's the Mail on Sunday, but I believe it's in Mexico. I don't know whether it's over here, but it doesn't seem to be getting a lot of attention. So I wanted to discuss it and read it with you. It's a world exclusive from Caroline Graham. Just weeks from his 80th, a forlorn Thomas Markle sees no hope of a reconciliation with his daughter. So it reads, turning 80 is a significant milestone in anyone's life, but for Thomas Markle, his big day on July 18th will be tinged with regret and mixed emotions. I never expected to make it to 80 because Markle men never do, he said last night. My father died at 61. I've had a good life and I am proud of what I have accomplished, but everything has been overshadowed by what has happened in the last 6 years. I've never been one for birthdays, but I know the one person I most want to hear from, Megan, won't be in touch. I would love to meet my grandchildren, but I would be happy with a photograph at this stage. Mr. Markle became estranged from his youngest daughter Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, in 2018 when he was unable to walk her down the aisle for her marriage to Prince Harry after he suffered 2 heart attacks on the eve of their wedding. The couple have not spoken to him since. Mr. Markle has never met his grandchildren, Archie, 5, and 3-year-old Lilibet. Speaking from his cliffside home in Mexico, just 250 miles from the Sussexes' 16-bathroom home in Montecito, California, he remains perplexed that he also has never met his son-in-law. While I reflect back on life, as you do when you are approaching 80, that's one of the questions I cannot find an answer for. Why didn't Harry ever come to meet me? He has the resources to fly around the world, and he does. But why didn't he come to see me? Particularly when people in the royal household like Jason Knuff, Harry and Meghan's former communication secretary, were urging him to do so. That has never made sense to me. What man gets married without meeting his wife's father? As he speaks, the effects of the serious stroke he suffered 2 years ago are apparent. At times, he struggles to find words or stumbles over sentences. He endures the aches and pains of old age, including a bad knee and a bad back, and is frustrated when he cannot remember names and places. Mr. Markle feels deep empathy for King Charles, who is in the same boat, as far as not seeing his grandchildren are concerned. I would love to speak to him, because I am sure he has many unanswered questions, as I do. Neither of us deserves the treatment we've received. He is going through cancer treatment, and I'm not in the best of health. I'm not afraid of dying. It is what it is. I have so many questions I'd like to ask Meghan and Harry, the main one being, why have they treated not only me, but the royal family and the king so badly? Like millions around the globe, Mr. Markle saw the stunning images from last weekend's Trooping the Colour, which marked the first appearance of Catherine, Princess of Wales, since her cancer diagnosis. But it was the sight of William and Catherine's 3 children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, on Buckingham Palace balcony that particularly moved him. Mr. Markle said, it struck me as very sad that Meghan and Harry's kids are being denied the right to know their cousins, who look like fantastic children. The relationship between cousins is a special one. There's a unique bond. I feel sad that Lilibet and Archie don't have a chance to get to know their cousins and take part in things like trooping the colour, which is their birthright. They are getting to the age where they will start asking questions, as all kids do. At some stage, it's inevitable that they will ask their parents why they cut them off from both sides of the family. They have two grandpas who want to see them, one of whom is the King of England. I never in my 80 years thought I'd be the same boat as the King. The decisions Meghan and Harry have made will affect their kids for the rest of their lives. I find myself wondering how Archie and Lilibet will feel in a few years' time when they realise all the things they have missed out on. An Emmy Award-winning Hollywood lighting director, Mr. Markle's life has taken him from small-town Pennsylvania to the bright lights of Hollywood. His father, Gordon, worked as a printer at Olmsted Air Force Base outside the family's home of Newport, Pennsylvania, while his mother, Doris, ran a sweet counter at a five-and-dime budget store. Tom started working on theatre productions in high school and later joined a local theatre group, where his talent blossomed. He landed a job with WTTW Public Television in Chicago and spent more than a decade on a groundbreaking live music program called Soundstage, a precursor to shows like Top of the Pops, working with Aretha Franklin and Billy Joel. After divorcing his first wife, Rosalind, the mother of his two oldest children, Samantha and Tom Jr., he decided to try his luck in Hollywood. In Los Angeles, he initially worked in a motel where he rubbed shoulders with prostitutes and an accused murderer before landing his big break with ABC television. "I've had a colourful life," he said. "When I worked at the motel, I was friends with a bodyguard called Gregory Diles. Diles, who died in 1997, was tried and acquitted for his involvement in a case known as the Wonderland Murders, in which four people were killed during a brutal robbery at a drug dealer's house. The case remains unsolved." Mr. Markle said, "They were interesting times. I loved my career and enjoyed being behind the camera. I worked with some of Hollywood's biggest stars, like Elizabeth Taylor, and covered the red carpet at the Oscars." Mr. Markle became the lighting director on two popular shows, General Hospital and Married with Children. He met Meghan's mother, Doria, when she was a secretary working at the same studio, and even though they divorced when Meghan was 2, they remained close. "We had such an amicable divorce that after I retired to Mexico and had to go to LA, I would stay with Doria and she'd cook me dinner. I always provided well for Meghan and Doria and was happy to do so. There was never any bad blood between us until Meghan met Harry." Meghan lived full-time with her father from the age of 11. When Doria launched an import and export business and travelled extensively, Meghan grew up on TV sets that I was working on. I'd either collect her from school myself or would send a car to get her and bring her to the set. Those are the happy times I look back on. Meghan had a great childhood, and I felt lucky as a father to spend so much time with her. She makes out she achieved everything on her own, but one of the directors of General Hospital, Owen Renfro, gave her a one line to read, which helped her to get an Actors Union card. That was what started her career. His living room in Mexico is filled with memories. A picture of Meghan graduating from the Little Red Schoolhouse kindergarten sits on the mantel above the fireplace. Her graduation picture from Immaculate Heart High School is on another wall. A picture of Tom taking Meghan to the Emmy Awards television's Oscars when she was 10 or 11 is sitting is on the wall above the sofa I am sitting on. He says, "The one thing I never imagined was Megan turning against me at this point in my life. I thought she would always be there for me. Megan was mad at me because I posed for some paparazzi pictures before the wedding. I was totally alone and being hounded. A photographer went to my daughter, Samantha, and convinced her that the pictures would improve my image. It was a mistake, and I have apologized for it repeatedly. When you look at what Harry and Meghan have done since, like accusing the royal family of racism, it's far worse than anything I have ever done. I don't want pity, and I don't want this episode to define my life. I don't want to be a footnote in history. I've never felt old in my mind, but it hit me a few years ago when people started standing up and offering me their chair. When the drama started with Meghan and Harry, I was already well into my 70s, and while I did not realise it at the time, I was vulnerable. Mr. Markle wonders if the royals blame him for their issues with Meghan. The person she's become isn't the girl I raised. But I wonder if they blame the Markle family for everything that has gone wrong. She started to change when she lived in Canada filming Suits and was hanging out with the Soho House, an exclusive members club and hotel chain. She began acting entitled. Things escalated after she met Harry. It upsets me that the Markle name is now associated with negativity. People talk about being markled when they get dumped for no reason. That saddens me. Mr. Markle will celebrate his birthday on July 18th with his son, Tom Jr., and will speak to his eldest daughter, Samantha, on the phone. She suffers from MS and is unable to travel from her home in Florida to be with him. He has already started to receive wishes from friends and former colleagues ahead of his big day. I don't expect to hear from Meghan and Harry, he said. I wish we could have worked this situation. I was always ready and willing to do that. So let's break this down, because that article, when reading it, does nothing but sadden me. And the empathy that I feel for the entire Markle family is unbelievable. But the term markled, Thomas Jr. has pointed this out several times until he's blue in the face. He absolutely despises the term. And he's right, because being markled, although to us it is funny, but imagine being a Markle. Imagine, so whether that is Tom Jr., Thomas Senior, Samantha, and their name is forever associated with it, that they are markled, and it is that negativity. She may be the one with the biggest public platform, but the term has a negative consequence on not just the Markle family, but anybody who has that Markle name, which, let's face it, even I look at my surname, and as weird as it is, I know I'm not the only one. I know that there are other families with that same surname. All I have to do is look on Facebook, but there we go. Tom Bower. So Tom Bower wrote in his book that the palace tried to convince Meghan to reconcile with her father and refused. So at this point, it's obvious that Meghan herself had essentially a grudge with her dad. But what for? So we have staged photos to which that they have admitted and apologised profusely about. Yet, this man was still due to walk her down the aisle. So the grudge isn't the stage photos. There's another reason. And I personally believe Samantha Markle is right on this in saying that the reason is because of the amount of Hollywood elites that were there that they'd never met, and the amount of high profile people that were there that would end up talking, and they would and as you do at weddings, you discuss, like, oh, how did you meet such and such a person? Oh, what were they like when they were such and such an age? You must be so proud. All of these things. And for me, if Meghan had a moment where she thought, oh, I've said things that my family could essentially debunk at my wedding, I don't want that. So the best thing to do is not to have them there. But it took her to the day of the wedding, essentially, for this grudge. And as you know, as you've just read, Thomas Markle Senior had 2 heart attacks on the eve of their wedding. Make that make sense to me. Because for me personally, I love my dad. I love my mum. I love my dad. And if I was getting married, regardless of whether the world was watching, if my dad had 2 heart attacks, and he has had a heart attack, he has had a stroke, but if he had 2 heart attacks on the eve of my wedding, guess what? I would not be getting married the next day. I wouldn't give a monkey's about who it offended, whether it was the entire world stage. There is no way I wouldn't walk down an aisle and not have my dad being able to do it. So it begs me to question whether Meghan psychologically found essentially a route that she could go down. It was a door that medically Thomas Markle Senior opened, and Meghan took that opportunity and flew with it. Of course, when you look at the actual wedding, and I always get really confused about this because she only walked down half of the aisle on her own. A lot of people just claim she walked down the aisle on her own. No, she only walked part of the way, which was her choice. And then she met King Charles, who walked her the remainder of the way, and he handed her essentially over to his son, the Prince Harry. But nobody really remembers that. And yet that was a moment that, even if there was trouble, I mean, we've looked at all the videos and we've gone, oh, every single person, every single royal face on that day was looking a bit questionable. They were all very sus. And yet, even with all of this going on, even if they did have their suspicions, King Charles was the one who stepped up to make sure that Meghan Markle didn't walk the entire way on her own. So it makes what she's done to both parties even more disgusting, in my opinion. So, so yeah, with the reconciliation, she refused. But yeah, I also have a bit of an issue, and I think I've said it before, with Harry not contacting Thomas Markle Senior. And even to this day, the royal family, not so much the royal family, but secretaries, stuff like that, they could liaise with the Markle family. Instead, they've just kind of gone and shut the door. And that is probably the biggest disappointment for me as a British looking at the royal family, because when you actually look at it, so for me, I am not a public figure. I don't have to worry when I walk out the front door that cameras are going to be there or people are going to be asking questions. But let's just say, I ended up marrying on a world stage a high profile figure. And I was an absolute nobody. And I've suddenly been thrust into that public world, in a world where everything is gossip and who can get their hands on information first. So then the next thing I know, I go outside my door and I have got people flooding at me going, such and such, question, 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 right? If you've never had to deal with that, now I respect that Thomas Markle Senior has worked in Hollywood before, but he's never been in front of the camera. He is always behind the camera. He doesn't have to deal with the questions. And people, when they're given these questions, they are essentially 9 times out of 10, to be fact, and that they actually have the questions before they even start filming, so they know what is coming their way. They discuss it, and if there's something that they won't address, it's off the cards straight away. But they know in advance the sort of things that they're going to have to answer, and they have the opportunity and the time to come up with something that is, deemed acceptable for the public. But Thomas Markle Senior, Junior, and Samantha, they're not given PR. They had nobody at their door or advising them. So from the minute that essentially Meghan Markle walked through the door of the royal family, not married, but walked through that royal door, one of the first things that Harry, with the guidance of the royal family and the firm, as they call it, should have been looking at opening a channel of communication with that Markle family. Because by doing that, they are allowed to basically support them. They are able to, they would be able to stop negative press from happening before it even happened. But you can't do that if you're on opposite sides of an ocean and no communication. I mean, even a pigeon carrier would have been something. But to have nothing, it says an awful lot to me. So with that, Thomas Markle Senior, also, if you noticed, he's made no mention of any of the suspicions regarding the children. The reason being, he doesn't want Meghan to have the implications of those suspicions. Anything that he says regarding the rumors, the surrogacies, all these, everything that is alleged with these children and their role in the line of succession, he has made no mention of whatsoever. As far as Thomas Markle Senior is concerned, what he sees, and as far as he is aware, is that Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have 2 children. These 2 children, regardless of how they came into the world, are his grandchildren. Whether they are in the line of succession means absolutely nothing to Thomas Markle Senior, because that doesn't affect him. It would not affect him as much as not being able to see his own grandchildren. And let's face it, we look at this whole world that Meghan has thrown us into, where there is the constant race card that is being thrown at us, and yet her own mother and father are an interracial couple. I'm pretty sure that Thomas Markle Senior and the Markle family have pretty much grown up in a world with the ideology that skin colour means nothing. So if the mentality of acceptance is already ingrained within them, it's not going to matter where these children come from. Not to them. And I'm not saying that everybody is racist. I'm not saying that at all. I'm not even, I mean, we know how that race card has been used, but I am just showcasing the argument that that race card and that division does not include this Markle family. So he also goes on to mention everything that will happen with the children in the future, which is right. Children will ask. In my experience, when I left my son's father, even though we get on brilliantly to this day, I always made it very clear that I was never going to be one of these parents that would trash the other party. I wouldn't do that. However, if it ever got to the point where our son was asking me questions, I put it point blank that I would not lie. I would not lie to protect his image. I'm not lying to my own kids. Not happening. And it begs me to wonder, is it a stretch that Meghan will eventually lie to her family, her children in the future? And the reality is yes, she would, because she needs to be held on that pedestal, that narcissistic pedestal that essentially she is a victim and she has come out stronger than ever, all of this, and she will portray that image onto these alleged children. Harry, on the other hand, is a bit more of a wet blanket. You know, he will go along with whatever Meghan wanted, because essentially he idolizes everything about her, and he's been taken in by this, how I call it, this essential evil that is Meghan. He's gone down it. He's in a maelstrom, and he's literally whirling round and doesn't have a clue really what's going on and the implications. But there is a part, I would say, like all maelstroms, there is the eye of the storm. There is a moment where Harry could break, and it's whatever Harry reveals to those children within that break. Because within that break, he will not have control over rational thought. And that's where it becomes damaging. But it's also the psychological problems that it actually holds on other members. So right now, this instant really has consumed the entire Markle family. The royals, it has affected them, but at the same time, because of their lifestyle and because of their health issues, and the children, lots of, you know, they've got a lot of stuff to keep them busy. So it doesn't have to plague the mind like it does the Markle family. They can get on with things over here, do these, as you say, the trooping of the colour, can do the royal ascots. And as daft as it sounds, these moments where you are surrounded by a massive crowd of people or you are at work, they are a distraction from essentially what is the hellhole that is going on around you. So they're able to distract themselves. Catherine, probably not so much. You know, I have images of her probably at home doing like little crafts with the children, to be honest, taking it easy, watching films snuggled in a blanket, because that makes me think, oh, you know, of all these struggles and the happy things that she, you know, the respite and that. It's nice to think of her being in a relaxed environment than it is probably to what the reality may possibly be. But that is that. But for the rest of them, they are able to block the circus out. So it's not really going to help psychologically the Markle family as well as the children. But then we also have Thomas Markle Seniors' health and mortality. This is a man who is literally, after 2 heart attacks and a stroke, is reaching his 80th, and he is aware that essentially he's not going to be around forever. I hope that he is around for a hell of a lot longer than the 80 years. I hope he keeps going. And I hope that one day he does get to meet these grandchildren. And I have a feeling that possibly he might. But this is also a man that is literally at the end of his tether, and he is looking for how his life will come to an end. And every single person, nobody really likes to think about death. Nobody likes to think, oh, how am I going to die? Or is it going, you know, all these questions that everybody has surrounding death. But one of the most comforting things that most people take is being surrounded by family and loved ones. So for Thomas Markle Senior at the moment, he is looking at his mortality. He is looking at the fact that he's had these 2 heart attacks, he's had a stroke, his memory is slipping due to that stroke, his speech is slipping due to that stroke. All of these things are slipping, and they slip further and further away each time You know, every day something else slips. And it's what happens in old age, and which Thomas Markle Senior is very much aware of this. So there's going to come a point, he knows, where he is no longer going to be able to remember possibly who Megan is. He will get to a point where will struggle to know as to whether he had these children as grandchildren. And even if he could remember, he also has to worry about the fact that he may not be able to say what he really wants to say whilst he has the ability to do it now. And that's really quite sad that Megan still to this day holds this grudge, because when you do look at everything, it doesn't matter what anybody thinks, even if the royal family did do something or the Markles did do something, it's been how long now? Like, there's holding a grudge and then there's letting it consume you. And that negativity that you hold on to doesn't just affect you, and it doesn't just claim you, it claims everything that is around you, including those children. Those children will suffer like you would not believe, all because of the negativity that Meghan Markle holds. So why is this happening, and why is it going on now? So I think I have pretty much explained the reasons as to why it is happening. And it is because of the fact that Thomas Markle Senior is noticing the decline in his own health, his own mortality, and as time goes by, there's still a lot of unanswered questions, and nobody should leave this world without knowing the truth regarding their own family members. It's hard when you walk away from something and there are still more questions than there are answers. But it's the motives behind this. And this is where it gets a little bit more questionable. Let's put it that way. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but I mean questionable in a sense that either you have what Thomas Markle Senior is doing is yet another plea. It could be a plea to Meghan and Harry to go, please put your differences for one side. Let's work this out. I want to make the change now before it is too late. Because the reality is how else is he supposed to get her attention? The only thing that Meghan has shown that she has any interest in is the media and controlling that media. And as a narcissist, when something comes about that isn't within your control, you spot it immediately. It grabs their attention because they have not controlled it, and then they go into this like little panic as to go, what's being said? Oh dear, no. That's what happens. So by now, Meghan Markle will know that this has happened. And this is either going to be, as I say, a plea for her to empathise, for her to lower that drawbridge and let him in. Or there is another reason. And it's one that would see, I believe, the Markle family experience more scrutiny on the world stage than Well, they've probably realised, but I think within the public it would end up being more questionable. The reason is that at the moment, you only just have to look at everything that is going on. Everybody can feel the drip, drip, drip. The dam is starting to open. And if the rumours are in fact true, that allegedly there is a separation on the cards, and this is why we are seeing the PR puff pieces of Harry wanting to come back home. Essentially, there is a worry for Thomas Markle Senior that Meghan will be left alone, that she is going to ride this storm and nobody around is going to trust her, is going to help her. Essentially, she has made the bed with so many people, she's going to have no one to run to. The reason that this article could possibly have come, and I'm not saying that it has, but it's opening the door. It's kind of a letting Meghan know that there is a key under the doormat, waiting should she need it. Because that is the next step, I would think. I would think that when everybody has turned their backs on Meghan Markle and Harry goes, then there are two people that she is going to run to for essentially security. I believe that one of them is Marcus Anderson, and the other one is going to be her dad. She will go running back to him, and it will be very much it will be an issue more so for Thomas Markle Jr., I believe. But I do believe he would respect whatever his dad wanted to do. He's gone there to look after him. Doesn't mean that he has to get on with Meghan Markle. Doesn't mean that at all. It just means that he respects his dad enough to let him make his own decisions whilst he still can. But yeah, that is the worry. And I do think that if that were to happen, yes, the media, they would play up to it. And they would be there going, oh, look, she's run back to her dad. He's accepted her with open arms. And everybody would turn around and go, oh my God, that family. And they would literally trash every single one of them. Which is sad because they've not done it. They've not done it. What this could possibly be is Thomas Markle Senior being a father, and regardless of what your child has done, until you know everything, or you cannot make those decisions. You do everything for your kids, and regardless, at the end of the day, he is still her father. So let me know what you think. And that, yeah, it's very sad. I do wish the Markle family all the strength and love in the world. And I know a lot of people do not trust any of them, but I don't care. I see the damage, and I see that every single article that has ever come out about them has been done with a narrative in mind, and a narrative not controlled by the Markle family, because that's what happens. So, yeah, let me know what you think. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below. We're nearly at 200 followers. You know, thank you everyone for still supporting me. So, yeah, like, share, and subscribe. and I shall catch you in the next one.